So we actually just celebrated the Public Works and Utilities Week. So it's a national holiday, more formally known as Public Works Week. So Public Works Week across the nation really kind of refers to all manner of public works. So it's streets, it's bridges, but it also includes water service and wastewater service, which we do separately in the city of San Luis Obispo as a utilities department from the Public Works Department. So locally, we call it Public Works and Utilities Week. But it's a nice opportunity to showcase some of our new employees to our council members. We receive a proclamation from the mayor. So it's a nice opportunity to welcome some of our newer staff members into the department.
That sounds wonderful, and such incredible and important work that everybody does in so many fronts here at the city.
Yeah, we do think of it as an essential service, obviously,
Absolutely.
Water and wastewater service, you definitely don't want to go too many days without those.
Absolutely. And that's why I want to have you on today to talk a little bit more about what you do here and about these services that, I think sometimes people take for granted. You're able to turn your tap on and you're drinking water and you're not giving it a second thought. But I just want to thank you again for coming on today. Aaron Floyd, the utilities director here at the city. And here at the SLO Lounge, what I'm trying to do is, get people in the community, I guess, interested in, acquainted with the different folks that do different things that make the city run here in this wonderful place we call home. And so, I wanted to get a little bit more of your backstory on how you got involved in this particular area and a little bit more about what your department does.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I appreciate that and definitely appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. It is one of those things too, you talked a little bit about, not everyone knows where their water comes from or where it goes. And I totally appreciate that and I totally accept that. And I think that's a great thing. But opportunities like this where we can get out and educate our community and tell people, a little bit more about what the city has done to prepare for, what we're currently doing at development, as well as where we're going in the future, taking into considerations climate change, drought, et cetera, is always fun. So a little bit about me. I've actually just been with the city now over 20 years full time.
Wow.
So I'm a graduate of Cal Poly. I did my undergraduate degree there. Really liked working in hydrology, fisheries biology. So with that, went into graduate school, also at Cal Poly. And while I was there was an opportunity to actually do some work out in San Luis Creek, where we were looking at steelhead that were actually emigrating back out to the ocean as part of their life cycle and making sure that our newer water reuse program, we could talk about that in a little bit, wasn't having any adverse impacts on the environment. So there I was as a graduate student doing this work for the city. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And then the city had a job open up, permanent, to work in the water quality lab. So with the backgrounds of chemistry, biology, microbiology, statistics, I was like, oh, what an opportunity. So I applied and was allowed the opportunity to start my career with the city. So it was a great time. I then went on into the industrial waste side of it, which is where we go out and do inspections at businesses and different facilities to make sure no one's putting anything down the drains that would harm either the creek or our wastewater treatment process. From there, I went on, did some work in stormwater, and then actually went into a deputy director position with the drinking water side. And about 5 years ago, became the director of the utilities department.
All right. How do you even know that you're passionate about these types of things? Is it from a young age and then you want to study it, or does it all just kind of matter of circumstances at Cal Poly?
That's a great question. It's really one of those things, and I think often folks in the utilities world don't envision themselves as kids going into such a thing. They don't wake up and go, well, with one exception, we do have our water treatment plant supervisor has always wanted to be a water treatment plant supervisor, so I give him a ton of credit on that. Many of us went to school and we had some ideas about things we wanted to work in. And, myself, I looked at it and I thought, I have a real opportunity right here to serve my community, provide drinking water, which is an essential utility, be, a part of what's really going on and what really makes a difference in the environment for where these fish live that I had been studying all this time. So for me, it was just a great opportunity. And especially in the city has allowed us to really be innovative at the next level. So we've led on the forefront of so many new things. We punch way above our weight. So we routinely are part of studies that are published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. We have had hundreds of interns come through our shop. So it's a great institution to be a part of.
That's fantastic. And so, again, like I said, part of this show is to get people to understand more of the services that they're receiving. So can we get into, I guess, a really, basic question? Where is our water coming from? The water that we have here on this table? How are you ensuring that stays, coming to our faucets, things like that? Because it is such an essential function. And I guess if it works, and you're not really thinking about it, that's probably good news for your department.
Right. And thank you again for the tap water. We'll give a little punch.
The taste test. How'd you do today?
Excellent as always. So the city of San Luis Obispo has a really interesting history on drinking water, especially. So if we start there, I could back up a second and give you a quick overview of everything we do in the department. We talked a little bit about my past on that, but it's probably good to frame it up a little bit. So the city of San Luis Obispo's utilities department, we have about 75 full-time staff in it. And we cover everything from where the water starts in the reservoirs, predominantly up in 3 different reservoirs. We'll talk about that a little bit. We treat the water up by Stenner Creek. We distribute it through around town through pipes. We have about 190 miles of pipes. So we send the water out to all of our businesses and communities right there. Once the businesses and communities use that water and it goes down the sinks or drains or even toilets, then we actually have about 150 miles of wastewater collection pipes. So we collect all of that water, then bring it into our water resource recovery facility, where we then treat that water to a next high standard and either discharge it into the creek after cooling it, so it's part of steelhead habitat, or we reuse part of it. So we also do solid waste. We don't drive the trucks, but we do administer the contract for that. So all of your solid waste, recycling, and organics waste, which is the new big one in the city, we are also responsible for all of that, as well as some stormwater. So a little history, since you asked the question, and I love talking about the history of water in the city of San Luis Obispo. So way back in the day, it makes sense. You look at some of the first settlements in here, you look at the mission, right? It's right on the creek. And that was pretty standard for most communities. You'd put your buildings, you'd put your central, civilization right there, right next to the water supply. It's an essential thing. It always has been. And then a lot of the times, unfortunately, a lot of the waste also got discharged right into the creek. So if you were on the downstream side of that, that was no good. So the city kept growing and growing, utilizing water from the creek right there, and then discharging it into the lower parts of the creek and some of the springs around town for years and years and years. And then folks way back in the day started to say, okay, this isn't really going to work. We need a little bit more than just living on the creek right here in our riparian areas for water. So in the early 1940s, as the war was really starting to go, we had Camp San Luis. And Camp San Luis was a training ground for a lot of our troops before they got deployed overseas to fight the war. So what was recognized at that time is the Army Corps of Engineers, then called the Department of Defense, or Department of War actually then, realized, hey, we need a water supply for all of these folks who are going to be at this camp. So they came in and went on the upper Salinas River and said, yeah, right about there, we're going to build a dam. And about 11 months later, this dam was in place on the Salinas River and was filling right away. So the reservoir then became ultimately known as Salinas Reservoir. So you'll hear us talk often about Salinas Reservoir. Most folks go, where the heck is that, right? Where's Salinas Reservoir? It's Santa Margarita Lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what happened there is Army Corps built this. They used it for a while. It was the water supply for Camp San Luis Obispo. And then when they said, hey, we no longer need to have this many troops here, they actually turned it over to the local jurisdiction. So the city of San Luis Obispo actually receives all the water out of Santa Margarita Lake. That was one of our primary drinking water supplies. So,
wow. I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure so many different cities have different stories on where their water comes from. That is so fascinating to have that backstory.
It's interesting when you think about, that being 1940s and we're still using the same infrastructure there. So obviously some repairs going along the way on it, but that's the primary one. We lived on that it was great. You know, we had a water treatment plant. We would bring it over the grade. We actually pumped it through the grade. There's a mile-long tunnel that goes right through there, flows right into the old water treatment plant that's now derelict. And we lived on that for about 20 years until right about the early 60s, late 50s. We went in and we partnered with the California Men's Colony and Cal Poly, and we built Whale Rock Reservoir. That was our second surface water supply. And it's interesting how many people go, where's Whale Rock? And I would highly encourage everyone, if you hadn't have a chance to see Whale Rock, it's about right above the town of Cayucas. It's an earthen dam. And if you drive up Old Creek Road right there, you can actually drive up and park, and it's a great place to go out and go hiking right there, mountain biking. There's some fishing opportunities, but it's a beautiful lake up there that we partner with Cal Poly and Men's Colony to receive water from that one as well. So we were living on both of those and some groundwater, and life was going great until we got into the major droughts of about 1986 through 1990. And then we started, no rainwater coming in. Things were looking pretty bleak. We were putting in a lot of groundwater supplies or groundwater wells, and the drought just kept coming. And we got down to a point where, as it's been shared with me, that we got down to about 18 months of water left for the city of San Luis Obispo. And people always ask me, Aaron, what would it look like if we ran out of water? And that's not a reality that I ever want to experience. So we, since that time, have really done everything we can to make ourselves the most water resilient possible. So we were lucky in that time. We got a bit of rain. They called it the March Miracle Rains. And we got what I've been told is about 20 inches of rain in 1 month, which is an amazing amount of water, filled the reservoirs, which, has kind of been the story over the last couple of years as you've watched these drought cycles. The nice part of it, though, is the city, and I really give a lot of credit to the residents and the council members at the time, recognized that another drought would come. So what they really did is say, hey, we need to continue to invest in new water resources. So they really jumped in on water conservation, which we should talk about at some point because it's a huge water supply in and of itself. They also said, hey, we should go after our Nacimiento supplies. So we worked with the county and worked on the Nacimiento water supplies. And we also then took our highly treated wastewater and started utilizing some of that for watering parks and watering medians. So by using that treated recycled water, we no longer have to take our drinking water supplies and use it for irrigation in some of those areas on the south part of town. So we built the Nacimiento pipeline with the county and several of our partners, Paso Robles, Atascadero, Templeton, and the like, couple others. And that started to flow in about 2011. So now we have Nacimiento, Santa Margarita or Salinas, Whale Rock. We stopped using groundwater for a while, but we just received another grant for about $7 million. So grant, free money, to clean up a little bit of there's some legacy pollutants in there. So we're cleaning up our groundwater as well as being able to have that highly treated water now become new drinking water. And we have recycled water and a conservation program. So we're in a pretty good spot right now. And that's current. We'll look at other things in the future too, but we're in a pretty good spot right now with our water resiliency. In fact, we are the number one most resilient water supply or purveyor within the county of San Luis Obispo at this point.
That is amazing. And there's a lot to unpack there because, like you said, you wouldn't want to picture what that looks like, running out of water. Right. Is that something that has ever happened in any community that you've heard of? Because, these things out of your control, droughts, cycles, things like that, that's got to be daunting when you can only do so much. But in a period like this where you talk about conservation and being active, but in those times, some of it's out of your control.
Right. Thankfully, nothing locally at this point. You do hear these, horrific stories, though, coming from other areas where wells go dry and there is needs to bring in trucks to bring water to people, so thankfully, and that I think is the job of all of us as local water managers, is to ensure that that never does occur.
Yeah. So groundwater, what is groundwater?
It's a great question. Thanks.
And I'm asking for myself too.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, right? So we kind of divided up. So we talked about the lakes, right?
Yeah.
And those are surface water. So everything that rain falls, catches in, it's like a big bowl up there and we catch it, all that water. Groundwater is actually water that is stored under our groundwater or under the basin. So If you find yourself kind of in the central part of the city of San Luis Obispo, if you were actually able to drill down in several different places down there, you would actually find water stored in it. So it's not like a big lake. It is like, beach sands, kind of sands like that, smaller particles, but there is water in all those open spaces in there. So you see this often for agricultural areas. So they will actually drill into the ground, put a casing down into the ground with perforations in it so they can pull water out by pumping it out. So this is something that was historically used in the city of SLO. There is a lot of people throughout the state that actually do use groundwater. We actually now regulate the amount of groundwater. I will say that San Luis Obispo has copious amounts of groundwater. Relatively, we think with our new groundwater program, we will probably, and I don't want to get too much into the jargon, but we'll probably be able to withdraw safely about 600 to 800 acre feet of water. And an acre foot is just like it sounds, an acre with a foot of water on it. And it's kind of the unit of measure for overall water in the industry. For perspective on that, the city right now uses about 5,000 acre feet a year for all of our needs. So that's everything from irrigation, businesses, residential. So yeah, we're in a pretty good spot with that. And the nice part about that is its resiliency. And that's really where we are kind of growing with our new water resources strategy is we have these great reservoirs and they're great, but we need it to rain for those to fill up. So what we're looking at now is continued ways that we can diversify that portfolio so that we can find ourselves in a way that, hey, if it didn't rain for a year or two, we still have these others, like the groundwater basin that we can bank water in and hold it there and then pump that out, that we can use it. It's also a nice strategy when we start looking at resiliency in the way of not just climate change or drought, but also if we have a seismic event or a mechanical failure, that we have these resilient, redundant systems. So that's really a big part of our current strategy.
Okay, amazing. And I want to get more into soon the sustainability side, the things that people can do at the home level to make sure that these things are made easier on your team's back as well, and things that are out of our control, like we talked about with droughts and things that are unforeseen. Can you talk about how the water gets stored and then eventually comes to our tap? In the meantime, how is it being, I guess, treated so it's safe for human consumption?
Oh, that's a great question.
And also, like I said, I had this handy, our annual water quality report here. I don't know if that factors into it, but yeah, how are you making sure that the water is quality? You get the water. That's the first step, but then to the person who drinks it or uses it.
Right. So what we actually do is we have a water treatment plant. So we take the water through a series of filtration. So we actually are taking out all of the small particles, that's surface water. So there isn't a lot of it in there, but there's a lot of those smaller, you could have things in the water. So we want to filter all of that out. Then we actually take it through disinfection process right there. So I'm simplifying a very complex project.
Sure.
And I know if our water operators listen to me, they're going to be like, okay, it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But for a high level, it's a lot of filtration right there that occurs, followed by primary disinfection. And the primary disinfectant is just to ensure that there is nothing else alive in the water, anything that could be harmful for people right there. We actually use a process that uses ozone, which, everyone thinks of ozone as being something different, but, 3 ozone or oxygen molecules slammed together so that it really is highly reactive with everything, so that it would actually essentially neutralize, if you will, any bacteria, pathogens, anything else in the water that could cause harm to people right there. We actually manufacture it on site. At the water treatment plant from liquid oxygen. It's a fascinating process. I would also recommend as part of this, if folks do have curiosity about this, we do tours in all of our facilities. So we'd be happy to bring folks out to let them see how this process works. But yeah, we actually neutralize all of the water right there. And then we actually put a secondary small amount of chlorine in the water. And the reason we do that, so sometimes when people say, well, the water tastes like chlorine. And I say, yes. And that the intent of that is because after that water is treated through the first time, it's possible as it's traveling all the way around the city in pipes and tanks as we store it right there, that you could have something regrow in it. So we don't want water to regrow some kind of a bacteria or something else that could even remotely cause any kind of problems with people's health. So we add chlorine into it in a small amount just to ensure we keep a little residual in there so nothing can grow in it. And that's the reason that you will find chlorine in most water.
And that's safe, I'm assuming.
That's not only safe, that is the safest, as well as that is also required. And that is what a lot of, you talk about requirements of it. It's interesting. The drinking water is so heavily regulated, as it should be, right? I mean, this is an essential thing that we all have to have for our daily health, to live. So you made reference to our annual water quality report, and that's something we call our community confidence report. We send this out every year, required. But if you go through there, you can see that we're not just testing for one or two things. You're going to find just loads of different constituents that we actually check for to ensure that we meet and exceed compliance with all of our drinking water standards. And what's interesting is as the science has grown, we are able now to test this stuff down. So we used to test in parts per million and then parts per billion. We're now talking about parts per trillion on some of these chemicals just to ensure we don't have any of them. If some were to occur, obviously, we would have to add additional treatment and everything to bring it out. But I'm happy to report to you and the community, we have a clean bill of health right now on everything. So
that's great. And I love that, it's such a transparent process. It's something that is obviously essential to life. So yeah, that's phenomenal to hear. Yeah. And the thing that you kind of brought up as well is something I was going to ask about is how do you ensure that the vessel for which the water flows is also then staying as clean and safe as possible? Because I know you mentioned the chlorine aspect of it, but how do you just stay on top of pipes and I guess so many pipes?
Yeah, chlorine does the big job for the daily stuff. But on the tanks, because you can have small amounts of things in there, we get in periodically and do maintenance on those. If most of our system is looped, so is water flowing around in loops, if you can envision that, as it kind of flows under most of the streets, that helps to keep the water fresh and moving. When we get out to some of the real distal ends of the system, where maybe a new development track is going to go in, but it's not there yet. So if we have a large pipe going out there, but there's not a way to keep that water flushing through it, what we'll go out there sometimes and do, and you'll see some of our crews out doing this, is we'll open up fire hydrants and other things to get that water to flow out. And what we're actually doing right there is discharging that old water to ensure that we have fresh water coming in that has chlorine in it and is good fresh water right there for the community. Folks come by sometimes and they, especially on the drought, get a little concerned on that. And I totally appreciate that. And if we have an opportunity to put that water to better use, we will. But obviously, it's a very, very small fraction of the water that we have to do that with. And obviously the human health part of it is the most important part. The other issue we're always working with right now, and occasionally folks have seen it, is pipe breaks. So we have capital plans where we spend our money. I think it's also worth pointing out here that the utilities department doesn't receive money from taxes. We receive money primarily from water and sewer bills that the community pays. So we're an enterprise fund in that way. So we use a portion of that money to actually invest in new pipeline projects. So as pipes get older, everything has a lifespan. Is it 50 years? Is it 80 years? Some of them, we have a lot of clay in the soil. So when it rains, they swell up, and it dries, they come down. Just like that paper clip, if you bend it, it will break. So we occasionally get these pipe breaks too. So another thing we do to ensure water quality is to make sure we have good pipes in there. So we spend a bit of money right there replacing critical infrastructure throughout the city. And that's based on fire flows and, are we near schools? Are we near hospitals? Those are the priorities right there. Or we know it's a major trunk line delivering water to parts of town. So that's how we prioritize that.
I already know I'll never look at water again the same way. This is all so fascinating. And the other thing about pipes too is I wanted to ask at the home level, is there something that people can be doing at that point right before the water comes out that residents can be doing to make sure that the last point of contact between your pipes and their personal home pipes stay good?
That really is when we cross that line right there. So everything, how it works is we deliver water up to the meter right there. So after the meter, it really is incumbent upon people in their home just to ensure, the water as it comes out of the tap is perfect. Actually, most of the constituents, or many of the constituents you can see on there, like lead and some of those others are actually sampled within, inside of homes. So we actually are getting kind of a survey right there of what folks are doing in their own home. As far as other things they might want to do, I talk to people, they're like, I don't really like the taste of the chlorine. People do use filters and other things to take that taste out. I will tell you that taking the chlorine out is something just to be aware of. You are taking the disinfectant out of it too. Is it fine for a short period of time? Again, I'm not a medical professional on this, but I will tell you industry-wide and as a microbiologist background, just be aware, right? You've taken out the disinfectant part of it, and that's why it is there. But in their own homes, though, I think people just need to be, kind of aware, use common sense on things right there, and most of those things will just be fine. The current, plumbing codes, everything else are designed really to keep people safe.
Okay, good to know. Now, at the home level and talking about resiliency and sustainability and things like that, is there any, short laundry list of things that you're reminding folks to do that really help the city in turn stay on top of making sure there's water for years to come?
I'm really glad you asked that because I was able to share a lot with you on everything we've done to keep ourselves water resilient and all of the investments we're making towards source water supply. But that doesn't do really any good for anyone if the community is on the other side using water in a wasteful manner. And I will say, hands down, this community cares so much across every way I look at it. This community comes out and tells me we are doing everything we can to conserve that water. And that's critical because, if we have a, extra ton of water sitting there, but people are just wasting it and letting it flow off, then we have to go out and look for more water, which costs more, which has more environmental impacts. When you start looking at that, every bit of water that we have to treat additional has more energy cost in it, chemicals that we have to put into it, cost more and more, more of an impact on the environment and the like. So we have a lot of work that we do in the way of water conservation, and we have a whole laundry list of things. I'd really recommend people go to our utilities website, which is pretty easy. It's slowater.org, not .com. That's a different group in town, but slowater.org, and go on our water conservation, and you will see a host of things related to all kinds of shut-off valves that we have for hoses. We have aerators for faucets, which help, so you're using less water right there. We have ways that you can test to see if your toilet has, a leak in it, that it is actually, that's a huge consumer of water. We have ways that we can kind of give you some tips on how to go and find irrigation leaks. That's a common place for people to find leaks. We are actually looking at new technologies where we can look at real-time water metering, so we can actually tell people proactively if you have a leak. So there is a ton of opportunities on there. Stop by, see us at the utilities shop or our utilities office at 879 Morrow Street. And we'd be happy to talk to you about water conservation right there, as well as we're also quite often down at Farmers Market. We have a booth set up there. So trying to get our word out, we put our word out on social media, we put it on the radio, and opportunities like this, we love it. We love to talk about water conservation, and I can't thank the community enough for doing a great job that they have continued to do over the years.
Oh, that's amazing. Every week at the Farmers Market.
Usually, I think right now we're doing every other now, and we're trying to bring in a couple other folks too. So you'll actually see, we'll do water conservation, but maybe we'll bring solid waste in that night too, or the wastewater collection folks. So we're trying to bring some of our other folks down there just to kind of talk to our community about it. It's actually interesting. There's when we look at it, and we talked a little bit about the drought of 86 through 90 and how much water we were using at the time, just to kind of show a little bit of value of the conservation side of it. There were some documents that were coming out at that time saying, hey, for all of your general plan build out, by the year 2020, you're going to need 10,000 acre feet of water. And if you'll recall, I already shared with you that we're using about 5,000 acre feet right now. So this community has done an amazing job. We were actually using more water, not per capita, but all in all, more water in 1986 than we are now. So you think about the population that's grown since then, and we're still using less water now than we were in 86.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's an impressive story.
Yeah.
Truly, that's on this community. So they've done a great job.
It sounds like it's a testament to the community, but also your team and the partnerships that you forge with the county, I'm sure with other with other folks as well. Can you talk about some of those partnerships that have been really instrumental in making sure that all of these things are going the way they're going?
Yeah, thanks. We do work. We work closely with the county and as well as a lot of our other water purveyors. And really, we're standing on the shoulders of giants who have come before us. There's a couple folks who picked up this work in 86 through 90 and really did an amazing job then. Have to give his name, Ron Munns, amazing gentleman who really kind of kicked a lot of this work off. But we actually now have a Partners for Water Conservation group. So we do get together with representatives from other community services districts and other cities throughout the county and actually work on, hey, rather than us all doing our own messaging, how do we share this messaging and get it out there? How do we make sure we're telling the right story and really try to focus these folks on it? So those partnerships on the conservation, as well as on the securing more and more resilient water. We do a lot of work with our county. We do a lot of work, as I mentioned, on Lake Nacimiento project with Paso, Templeton, those folks, Atascadero, and then Cal Poly and even California Men's Colony on Whale Rock. So water really is a regional issue, and it's one that we are a lot stronger and able to carry a much stronger message when we talk with one language on it. So
yeah,
good partnerships locally.
And it sounds like just the work continues, and even in times where there isn't a drought, you're still preparing always for whatever the future may hold. It's a never-ending process.
Yeah,
sure.
You got that. We're looking out. I mean, I know a lot of people say, oh, we're looking long-term, 10, 20. We're looking 50, 80, 100 years down the line right now. That's why, we're good, as I mentioned, we're most water secure, water resilient community right now on the Central Coast. But we're still looking at those other things. So we just received that grant to clean up that groundwater so that we can have that extra water. We're right now part of a study group with the county. So the county is actually looking at desalination. And what does that look like? We don't even know yet. Is that the fit for us? We're not sure at all. We might do something on that and find that it's not worth it. Or maybe there is a golden opportunity there that we hadn't seen before. And there's a lot of different iterations on it. There's a lot of new technologies coming out. But we want to ensure that we're at the table, that we have the community's voice heard of, hey, what could be and what is the best opportunity for us and at what cost, monetarily, and we get it, stuff costs more money. We understand that those things could cost more money. So we want to ensure that, we're considering that. But we also want to look long-term. We have good water supplies in our reservoirs, but we have to have water fall from the sky in the way of rain to fill those up. What does that look like? So we're always looking at new opportunities and new ways to make ourselves more resilient.
Lovely. Wonderful to hear that. And so we've talked about where the water comes from, where it's housed, how it gets to the homes, businesses, everything, sustainability. Can we talk a little bit about after the water is used, where it goes, and kind of also how that might tie into that sustainability aspect too with wastewater treatment and how, recycled water might get used in this big picture as well?
So good point. So every time the water gets used in the city, it goes down a drain. We collect it all, about 150 miles of it, a pipeline out there that folks, make sure are all up and running. And it all comes into our water resource recovery facility. Now, most people would call that a sewer plant. It was historically called the sewer plant or, a wastewater plant. But we call it a water resource recovery facility for a reason. We're able to take that water in. We're able to extract. So one of the ways we treat it is we actually use, it's like soil microbes. So it's soil microbiology. So it's the same stuff that if a plant in your yard was to die and it was to break down, by these little microbes in there eating it, and we actually use a similar process to treat wastewater. So we're able to harvest some of those microbes right there, and we can actually then turn those into compost. So that's another opportunity. They create methane. We collect the methane right there, and we have a cogeneration unit down at the Water Resource Recovery Facility. This is the facility on Prado Road right now. So folks are familiar with some of the construction going on there. I want to also thank them real quick for their patience as we're nearing the end of our 5-year project on that. But we use that methane right there so we can generate electricity to actually power the plant. Not all of it, but we're gaining on that. And that's our ultimate goal, maybe a little bit of solar in there. So we are using that recycled water as well. So it's already created water right there. We discharge some of it into the creek. We chill it and dechlorinate it to keep a nice steelhead habitat there, as well as we're using some of that to offset our drinking water supplies. So pretty neat what we're doing with that. The new plant, too, has had a big transition. We used to use a lot more chemicals in the treatment. With the new facility we're bringing online, we've switched a lot of it over to electrical processes instead. So less reliant on trucks coming in, trucks bringing chemicals, all of the processes that go into making synthetic chemicals like that for treatment, instead of going to electricity, with the ultimate hopes of having more of an on-site ability to generate electricity, as well as we're part of our 3CE, our ability to buy electricity from more sustainable sources.
This is so cool because everything you do, it sounds like it's not just one thing for one purpose. It's putting all these things together. Like you said, you're collecting methane, you're looking at different ways to be sustainable at all of these different fronts. I think that's amazing. And things that I would have never thought about. I don't know if a lot of people think about these things.
No, a lot of people don't, and I totally appreciate it. I mean, I'll tell a story here. My daughter was probably, I think she was in kindergarten at the time, and I was picking her up and I said, I have to drop you off quick. I need to head over to another meeting and I'm going to go talk about water. And she just kind of gave me this look. Well, what are you going to say? And I said, we just need to talk about water. I'm trying to break this down to the level of my kindergartner. And she said, Dad, I don't think you should talk about water and where it comes from and stuff. And I'm like, well, why not? She's like, everyone knows it comes from the tap. They'll just think you're being silly. I'm like, so it just kind of, it illustrates the point that a lot of people don't think about where their water comes from. And I totally appreciate that. That's totally fine. But when folks do have a curiosity or they want to learn more, and especially with the questions you ask, which I really appreciate, how can they continue to contribute to that longevity and sustainability? We love to have those conversations.
Well, I think it's really cool too, because as somebody who personally, I would say wasn't particularly interested in this topic, in years past, for example, but getting to hear more about the backstory, it is going to cause me, and I'm sure many others, to be more conscientious of where it comes from and how to be better stewards of water, of the environment, of the utilities and services that they're using. So I think even if someone isn't particularly passionate per se to make it into their hobby or career, I think just knowing things gives you a better understanding and appreciation for these really good resources, imperative resources.
Yeah. I would agree. And I hope that's what we get out of this. And again, if folks do have an interest in it and they do want to come take a look at the facilities, look us up on slowater.org and come, set us up time and we'll take you out and we could show you some of the different facilities. So it's really fascinating to see what goes on at them. So
I definitely plan to do that.
Good.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Before we take off, I want to switch gears really quick because like I said, this is the SLO Lounge and you are somebody who is also passionate about SLO. You went to school here. You do such amazing work for this community. Can you tell us why you love this community? Why do you like SLO? What are your favorite things about it?
Beyond the fact that I love the outdoors and this area has everything. So the trail system around here, I think it's interesting. We talk to most of the people in the community, right? What do they love about SLO? A lot of people, open space. Yeah, me too. It's incredible. We have the combination of everything right here. It is an amazing area. I love the fact that when I walk downtown, you see people San Luis Obispo has really retained that magic of having a community. And I think it's, throughout the decades that I've been here, it's just continued to go like that. And I love that. Personally, for me, in my job, I love the fact that I know that I'm supporting these folks in our community. I love the support that we receive from the community. I love when we set up our booths at Farmers Market. Folks come by. Last week, we had our Utilities and Public Works Week. Folks, we bring some of our equipment down and we see the kids come out and they get to see, hey, these are the folks actually working and serving you folks right here. That's amazing. I love the support we receive from our city council, so we can try things like, hey, we have this opportunity to go after this grant, for groundwater, and they're just 100% encouraging. Yeah, make it happen. So it's a great, great feeling to know that you're able to work in an organization that is directly supporting the everyday lives and needs of our community. And I get to work with great people. It's a fantastic position.
Great position, a great place, and a little shout out to Council Member Michelle Shoresman who connected us. It's cool to hear that full circle of the support you get from the council as well. And I'll ask you a question I asked her, again, going back to the topic of San Luis Obispo. I asked her, what makes for your perfect weekend in this place? Maybe a little shout out to the different businesses that you might encounter or the things that you like to do. Favorite place to get tacos? I don't know. What's your best weekend here?
Favorite place to get tacos? That's a controversial one, huh? I'm going to go back and say it's the open space.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it really is. I do love the trails. I try to hit, recently I've been able to take advantage of the longer days and get out up on Cerro San Luis in the evenings. You get to see all the folks out there, also enjoying it, running, hiking, mountain biking. It's incredible like that.
But I just can't thank you enough for coming on the SLO Lounge today. It's awesome. You're so passionate about what you do. It sounds like your team shares the same sentiments as well about caring for the community, doing these things exceptionally and doing them in a safe way that just supports people in the community. What a wonderful thing that you're doing. And we really can't thank you enough.
I appreciate the time, Nick. Thank you. And yeah, again, I'll make one last plug. Check out the website. Come talk to our people. I have a passion for it. They are next level. We have the most amazing team in the utilities department, actually throughout the city. I just get to work closer with the folks in the utilities department, and you would be hard pressed to find a group that cares more about serving their community. So yeah, I highly recommend folks to come out and check out the work our folks are doing.
Amazing. And not only you, but anybody from your team is welcome to come share their passion on the SLO Lounge. The SLO Lounge, I better get my own name right. They can come anytime. So we thank you for your time today, and we will see you in the community.
Thanks, Nick.